So now it's my great honor to introduce this year's Weinberg College Convocation speaker, my colleague and friend, Natasha Trethewey, Board of Trustees Professor of English. Natasha is a subtle interpreter of truths. With velvet language, she shreds our complacency, compelling us with pleasure and criticism to seek out our own truths. She is a poet who has produced a series of poignant collections: Domestic Work of 2000, Belloc's Ophelia of 2002, Native Guard of 2006, and Monument, which appeared last year. For this, she's been recognized by a dizzying array of awards, including the Convocation Prize, the Lillian Smith Award for Poetry, fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. She also received the 2017 Heinz Award in the Arts and Humanities, a Pulitzer Prize for Native Guard, was Georgia Woman of the Year in 2008, and served 2 terms as the US Poet Laureate. In these days, we need poets. Natasha Trethewey embodies the academic values I mentioned before: creativity, judgment, and community. So please join me in welcoming Board of Trustees Professor of English, Natasha Trethewey.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, members of the Northwestern and Weinberg College community, friends, family, faculty, and staff, and the graduating class of 2019. It's an honor to speak to you on this momentous occasion. I am still relatively new to this lovely place, and I have the exhilarating feeling of setting out, like you, embarking upon some new journey. Many of you began your studies here with a particular idea in mind of what your path would be. Some of you have stayed on it, others have switched. Many of you have yet to even find it. Occasionally, something happens that changes the course of our lives: fortune or hardship, luck or adversity. I've come to believe that since it is impossible to fully know what is before us, knowing the destination is less important than what we gather along the way. That's why I'm reflecting today on the role of the arts in our lives and on adversity. In your time here, you've no doubt heard this phrase: take a Northwestern direction. Hearing it makes me think of Martin Buber's words: all journeys have secret destinations of which the traveler is unaware. And one of the things you've surely gathered here, in an institution committed to nurturing creativity and innovation, is an awareness of the importance of the arts as integral to the rest of your studies and, I would argue, the rest of your lives. It's often easy to overlook the importance of the arts in our lives. We are increasingly busy. Occasions for the kind of quiet contemplation and focus, for example, that poetry requires are rare. And yet, over the last few years, more and more of us have turned to it than in previous decades. Readership has grown exponentially, and increasing numbers of people have turned to other arts as well, either to experience or to create them. We are in a cultural moment in which the need for some kind of engagement with or participation in the arts is stronger than ever, not only for art's ability to entertain us, but also to sustain us in myriad ways. This need has always been significant in my own life, though I did not always think consciously about it. Even before I was a teen, turning to the lyrics of popular music that spoke to my inchoate feelings of youthful rebellion or love or angst, I gravitated to various art forms in order to grapple with my difficult situation. When I was a small child, my parents divorced, and a few years later, my mother remarried. For 10 difficult years, we lived in the house with my stepfather, a troubled Vietnam veteran with a history of mental illness who became abusive a couple of years into the marriage. In spite of this, in spite of growing up in a household disfigured by domestic violence, my childhood was not wholly an unhappy one. Thinking back on it now, I see that I found respite in the various arts. In writing short stories or acting in plays, I could imagine myself into other worlds, inhabit other characters whose different lives could show me something about my own or transport me to faraway places of possibility. In dance, I could find in my body's language the just articulation of things I could not say, music helping me body forth what I desperately needed to express. Even the gravestone rubbings I did in the old cemetery near my house provided not only images I could hang on my walls, moody and beautiful in shades of charcoal, but also a way to connect with history dating back a century or more. Though I could not have said it then, all of these things were helping me to cope. Already, art was proving to be transformative in my life. I could not have imagined how deeply I would come to need its healing, sustaining effects. A year after her divorce, during exam week of my freshman year, my mother was murdered by her then ex-husband, who, in spite of the divorce, had continued to stalk her. Even now, the depths of my grief are still with me, but I cannot underestimate the role that the arts played, not only in my ability to deal with trauma, but also in my survival. Not long after she died, I turned to poetry, attempting to write a poem that can contain that grief, give order to the chaos I felt. Like many people, I must have instinctively known that I needed the kind of articulation that only art can provide. Indeed, in the aftermath of tragedy, the events of September 11th, more people read or wrote poems in this country than had in a long time, most of them ordinary people who do not think of themselves as writers or regular readers of poetry. For them, as for me, poetry was a refuge. Still, even then I did not see where I was headed. Later, in a sophomore literature class, I read for the first time W.H. Auden's poem, Musée des Beaux-Arts. The first few lines struck me immediately. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters, how well they understood its human position, how it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. I could not believe that a poem could tell me anything I didn't know about what I was feeling, about the depths of my suffering in the aftermath of my mother's death, how I had been asleep, blithely unaware when it happened, how the world around me seemed hardly to have noticed at all, how isolating that sense of being alone in my grief. The poem invited me to consider paintings that address how small the individual tragedy or loss can seem, ignored or unnoticed in a corner, as in Bruegel's Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. In both the painting and the poem, the idea of the indifferent world going blithely about its business as Icarus drops into the sea, his tiny legs just visible above the surface of the water, I recognized the plain truth that my grief had prevented me from seeing, that if suffering isolates us, it connects us too, across time and space, to the experiences of others. It was the first time I understood that art could speak to me intimately about my own experience, that the language of a poem or a painting could save me from the feeling of overwhelming isolation brought on by trauma and grief. In the midst of my despair, I suddenly felt part of something communal, ancient, and ongoing. And when I encountered Liesel Mueller's poem, When I Am Asked, about why she began writing poetry, it spoke directly to me as if I had written it myself. The poem begins, "When I am asked how I began writing poems, I talk about the indifference of nature." The poem goes on to convey her grief over the death of her mother. It ends with this lovely declaration, "I placed my grief in the mouth of language, the only thing that would grieve with me." I don't know the exact moment I realized that I would be a poet, but I do recall the lightning rod of her words, the realization that my greatest loss had been transformed into my purpose, giving meaning to the sudden tragic turn my life had taken. Whereas art had sustained me throughout the years, poetry had now become my particular calling. As a poet, I am most often speaking about the literary arts in particular, but I believe my assertions to be true of all the arts. The materials of art, what poet Adrian Rich called our memories, dreams, stories, language, history, are everywhere around us. And though not everyone will become an artist, the impulse towards some kind of aesthetic practice exists in all of us. And even when we don't actively seek it out, we are often moved, educated, enlightened, or heartened by art when we encounter it. It allows us the opportunity to reflect on the human condition, to see ourselves in others, evoking in us our noblest trait, the ability to empathize. Art has always been a necessary part of our collective survival. From the earliest cave drawings, it has allowed us to keep alive the cultural memory of a people. It has served as a record of our existence and value as human beings, showing us where we have come from while offering a particular kind of redress, a reckoning with the past as well as our own present moment, and showing us our potential to create a better future for all. We are living in difficult times. Everywhere we see images of mass shootings, refugees fleeing the devastation and violence of their homelands, police using deadly force on unarmed citizens, acts of terror both domestic and abroad, the rise of virulent, vocal, and increasingly mainstream forms of white nationalism and separatism, anti-Semitism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia, environmental degradation, uncivil discourse, and outright lies. We need the truth of poetry, the transformative power of art, the way that our own impulses toward beauty are the greatest reminders of our humanity and the potential for the ennobling of our souls more than ever. It is essential to our democracy. Often, after watching the news or reading the paper, feeling the despair that reoccurring tragedy invokes, I turn to a poem by Adam Zagajewski, translated by Northwestern's own Claire Kavanagh, Francis Hooper Professor in the Arts and Humanities. It's called Try to Praise the Mutilated World. Try to praise the mutilated world. Remember June's long days and wild strawberries, drops of rosé wine. The nettles that methodically overgrow the abandoned homesteads of exiles. You must praise the mutilated world. You watched the stylish yachts and ships. One of them had a long trip ahead of it, while salty oblivion awaited others. You've seen the refugees going nowhere. You've heard the executioners sing joyfully. You should praise the mutilated world. Remember the moments when we were together in a white room and the curtain fluttered. Return in thought to the concert where music flared. You gathered acorns in the park in autumn, and leaves eddied over the earth's scars. Praise the mutilated world, and the gray feather a thrush lost, and the gentle light that strays and vanishes and returns. The act of trying to praise the mutilated world is an act of hope. The poem says, "We have survived. We are still here." A generative act, it is a triumph over despair, and it offers an occasion to not only look back, but to imagine a future in which what is good, like light, can return. I think of how often hearing some music I loved, the strings of a violin, the way a saxophone seemed to scream for me, or staring at a painting, the way the golden light bathing the lone female figure, Mary, in Henry Tanner's The Annunciation, could lift me out of my sadness and restore to me moments of my greatest happiness. Can art save us? Already it has saved us from the oblivion of being a people without history. Our cultural production, our impulse toward artistic expression, is the best record and evidence of the intrinsic value of our shared humanity. In a world of uncertainty and dramatic change, it's impossible to know where we are headed. I know that in my life I have faced tragedy that could have destroyed me, and I know the role that the arts played in buoying and restoring my wounded soul. Whatever your path, whatever this direction you've begun at Northwestern takes you, the arts are always there to pillar your soul, to connect you to the hearts and minds of others across time and space, to teach you about our shared history, to summon the better angels of our nature, our capacity for empathy and hope in the pursuit of the necessary collective goals of justice and living our best lives. Congratulations to you all as you embark on the rest of your journey.